Jack Himmelstein. I live in New York. Lived there for over 40 years. My background is principally in law. I was a civil rights lawyer for 6 years with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund after graduating from Harvard Law School, where I was also cross-registered in medical school, studying psychiatry. I worked against the death penalty at a particularly fortuitous time, very special time, because we were successful in 1973 overturning the death penalty in the United States as it then existed. So I worked all over the country. And then I went into law teaching. I come from a personal background in which central to my being in life was always an interest in the relationship, even from as a young child, between what goes on inside us and what goes on outside us. And that particularly took the longing for justice in the world. And that led to my work in the civil rights movement. But it also led ultimately to my interest in mediation and conflict resolution. So when I joined the faculty of Columbia Law School in 1973, I became particularly interested in bringing humanistic education and humanistic educational psychology, which I had been studying, and spiritual psychology, into the law teaching and law study framework. I did that with a course that I developed where students represented people in mental health facilities, or mental hospitals as they were then called, about their legal practice. So it was a clinical work, but it also had a lot of introspective elements to it in terms of what it meant to them and for them to be lawyers, why they were being lawyers, and how they wanted to be lawyers. That led in turn to a grant which I applied for from the National Institute of Mental Health and NIMH to teach law teachers how to apply these principles in their law teaching, which I did for a number of years in the late 70s and early 80s. And at that time, I also met Gary Friedman, who had recently left the formal practice of law, not knowing where he was going. I know you've talked with Gary. And he was then re-emerging into law in a way that he didn't know what to call, but eventually called mediation, working directly with people in conflict. And he developed the practice element, and I developed the theoretical element, and we did this in interchange with each other. He was on the West Coast, I was in New York on the East Coast, and we would dialogue in that way. And he also became a part of these, he became the practitioner in the trainings for the law teachers from around the country. As we developed an understanding of alternative conflict resolution or mediation, we started to hold workshops, first actually for law teachers, and then we started to develop workshops for practitioners. And what was central to the approach, which I think is what we were both seeking in our work as lawyers, was human understanding. For ourselves, help people in conflict develop human understanding, first for themselves. And often in our trainings, people say, hear one party say something and ask the other party whether they understand what they've said. And we said, much too early. Because people need to be understood themselves by the mediator before they can be asked to understand the other. In our model of mediation, we don't ask people to try to understand the other until we understand them. The analogy being, if you want to feed hungry people, you don't build a group of hungry people, to fill hungry people until you feed them. And so until people feel understood, at least by the mediator, it's very hard for them to reach out with any sense of understanding for the other. So understanding became central to our approach to conflict. It's not all that goes on, but to build an understanding of what's important for each party, what's important at a deeper level of their interests underlying the conflict. We actually have a notion of what we call a V diagram. People want to go from positions to solutions, and we say it's important to go underneath the positions to what's really important, and only then to the options and then to the solution. And going under the positions, there are different levels. The level which was captured by Roger Fisher in Getting to Yes is the level of interest. What are my interests? Why do I want $100,000? I feel I'm entitled to $100,000, what the party wants. And so we have the level of interest, but below that we have the level of meaning. Because in our lives, although we don't talk about it, and particularly in conflict, there's often existential issues of meaning, and sometimes existential crises going on. And we don't usually talk about that with each other. We often don't realize it ourselves. And so we wanted to allow that opportunity, no pressure on people to go to that level that underlies conflict, but the possibility of going to that level really touched both of us and many of the people we work with, because that's a place we think exists for everybody, a place that we're all very deeply connected. So we try to build that into any approach to conflict resolution. Principle one that we developed is being mediation. We've been holding mediation trainings for many years, and as collaborative practice movement developed, which we very, very strongly support, although we do think it's unfortunate there is sometimes conflict between, distrust between, misunderstanding between collaborative professionals and the mediator. As collaborative practice developed, we started to also teach in the area of collaborative practice. We have now a core group of 4 of us, Gary, myself, and 2 Catherines. East Coast is Catherine Miller, formerly a litigator in the family area, and then became a practitioner of mediation, and now mediation and collaborative practice. And Catherine Connor on the West Coast, who is a mediator of family disputes, and now principally a collaborative lawyer. So we've been doing trainings in this country, and I've had the good fortune, primarily with Gary, to do trainings in Europe. We brought mediation to Germany and Austria, and we're among the first in Switzerland back in the early 90s, starting in 1990. And we're either the first or among the first to bring mediation to Israel.